So happy Friday, everybody. And let's see, we're just going to go ahead and get started. So the shirt today is an old one. In fact, it's kind of wrinkled, I see, but it's got toucans on it. So speaking of the little birds, it's got a little jungle theme. It's not quite as wild as my cat shirts. And what I've realized in going back and going into my old shirts is that the tags are driving me nuts. My new shirts, none of them really they have a stamp, and they're just a different material. And now, like all day long, I just scratch my neck. So I might have to change, I don't think I can tolerate this all day long. The bear today, little bear is still on vacation. He'll probably be on vacay for a little while. Um, but Big Bear is Superman. And so this was the last year in 2020. Our theme for the percussion ensemble was going to be Marvel. So I had Spider Man, Superman, Batman. I had all the little costumes, and the bear was going to change throughout the show to the various superheroes. So we never got to do that. So I don't think you've seen this one. So this is his Superman, and I put some sunglasses on him, and so he could like fly through the air. Um, and so anyway, superheroes are always popular. So this week I had to take some Crocs back, Crocs the shoes, to a store, and I realized they have these little tiny Crocs. And gosh, I was so tempted because I was like, those would fit the bear so perfectly, but they were like 25 bucks. And I was like, oh gosh. So I didn't, but someday, I might have to. And not only that, but they have the little Crocs that have little holes in them. They have these little pins that you can put in, and they've gotten quite creative with these little pins. This is a thing that kids do in Colorado. Crocs are still really popular here because the Croc place is here, the headquarters or one of them. And they have all these different little pins, and then kids just, trade them or have different ones. And the pins are really cool. I mean, they're more cool than the shoes. So I don't know. I better not start with the little Crocs because then I'll be doing pin collections, and I'm trying to move things out, not move things in. But anyway, it was pretty cute, and maybe I can just go there and take a picture with the Crocs on the bear. The lady was pretty nice, so maybe I could do that. Try on shoes and take pictures for the class. A little field trip. Okay, I'm gonna get quite a reputation of being wacky. Here comes that wacky lady with the Hawaiian shirt, to Home Depot, or now it's gonna be the Crocs store. Pretty soon they're gonna have like a poster at the post office. Watch out for this lady's wacko. Anyway, so today I didn't hear any suggestions, and so I was like, what do I talk about today? So since we started to talk a little bit about rope drums, I put together a tiny presentation, and then I don't really have anything planned. So I'm hoping that we can think up something to talk about, and then hopefully I'll, think up some more cool stuff. There's got to be more, that we can potentially talk about. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to talk just a little bit about rope drums because we mentioned them, but we really haven't talked about them too much. So and honestly, I'm not an expert on these because I've seen them, but I've never played them. And I've seen them mostly in museums, and I've seen them, paintings and things like that, but I've never actually gotten to wear one. So a rope tension drum is like what it sounds. It is got rope here, and we have this is called the hoop, and it's a wooden hoop. It's a wooden drum with a wooden hoop. um, Contemporary drums are wooden, but the hoops are made of metal. And there's tension rods that are made of metal. They're just called little tension rods, and they go into what's called a lug. And in a minute, I have a picture of a modern drum versus a traditional rope drum so you can kind of see the difference. But basically, these heads that you play on are held together by the rope, and it's one kind of continuous piece of rope that kind of goes through and then gets tightened. And so the head, the way that you determine the pitch, if you're going to tighten the head, it's going to have a higher pitch. If you loosen the head, it's going to have a lower pitch, is controlled by this rope. And they're very beautiful. They're painted. You can see this one right here is got this, usually there's some kind of a crest or an emblem on them. Okay, so the history. So this was fun for me to look up a little bit. And so they have been used in many different cultures around the world. Chinese troops actually use them to motivate their troops. It helped to, if you think about it, when you're marching a troop, maybe, going into battle or something like that, it could control the pace. If you're just kind of don't need to go too fast, the drummer would play slow. If you're hurrying, they might speed it up. They also would have certain little ditties that they would play that would be, a signal because you couldn't yell and people would hear you in the back. So you could play something and that meant something. And so it could be an announcement, we're going to stop soon, or hey, prepare, the enemy is here. So and then they gave an example here. Actually, 1684 BC. So it actually, the drum had an influence on soldiers' morale. And so there was just one example. Another example, pre-Columbian warfare with the Aztec nations. They also used it for signalings. How interesting that in different continents, people had the same idea. And we've talked about in the African cultures how it's used to communicate between villages, not always for battle, but maybe, hey, we're having a celebration tonight, you're invited, and they would send that sort of a thing. Or hey, we had an extra good day hunting and you're welcome to come and celebrate and eat with us or whatever. um, it's also used in some religious, it's been written about in religious scriptures. A lot of time, again, war drum. So it's not always war, it could be celebrations or things like that. But they kind of talked about, if you think about even with the troopers, the battle hymn of the Republic, sometimes it did have sort of a military, but it could also be celebratory or something like that for feasts and things like that. The English Civil War used them again to communicate between junior officers or senior officers wanted to communicate to the junior officers. They would actually use drumming. And then it also in the mid 19th century, a lot of the military Scottish bands started to incorporate, pipes. And so not only was it drumming, but now you had other instruments. And I've seen lots of paintings of kind of Civil War where they had a flute, and or a bunch of flautists and drumming, and then of course the Scottish had the pipes. So it's kind of interesting how it's evolved. It's a very different style of drumming. So here's the troopers example. So I love these. I found this just by accident. There's these little statues. There's somebody who makes these little statues of various drum corps, and this is one that was really cool because these are rope drums. And here's an example from probably the 60s, maybe the 70s, probably late 60s, 68, 69, 71, right in there. Here's the drum. You can see it's a larger drum. It's a lot deeper, and it's got this rope at the bottom. So this is kind of the leftover rope, actually hangs down. And you can see that it's at a slant, not as much of a slant as you might imagine, and because these are on a sling. And in a moment, I'll show you the difference between a modern carrier and a slinged type of situation. And we'll also talk about matched versus traditional grip, which we've kind of talked about before. So here's, if you want this, I can send it to you later. This is a company that's making these drums right now. It's called the Loyal Drums, and it's a company that's well known in the United States. There's some others, but there's not that many that do this. It's very specialized, and people have a custom drum made of their own family crest or group or whatever. Beautiful drums, and they actually will, it's all kind of custom sorts of stuff. So here's an example of sort of more of Scottish pipe band situation. You can see the sling right here is over the right shoulder. The drum is off to the left. And you can see this grip here. So you had to, if you played matched grip, you'd be smacking your left hand on the rim there, that wooden rim. So they turned the hand over, and that's why people started playing traditional grip. And so here's a more, this is the, what used to be called the Garfield Cadets. Now they have a little different name. But here's an example of using traditional grip, but their carriers are flat. So in drum corps, they still have flat drums. They don't have the angle drums, but they maintain that traditional grip. It's a little bit more complicated. It's a little harder. And I've kind of talked about sort of the history of sort of how that have evolved and now is still kind of around. And so these are just some pictures of some rope drums on this side and then some more contemporary drums on this side. Looking at the sling versus the modern carrier, so you can see the sling can be very simple. It can be just a rope. It can be, in this case, kind of a wide buckle type situation that can be increased or decreased depending on the size of the person. It's always worn on the right side and it crosses over, so the drum is a little bit off to the left, not exactly in the middle because you're trying to walk. So it's kind of on your left leg. Every time you walk, it kind of moves. And it is at an angle, kind of, it can be angled in different ways. Sometimes it's this way, sometimes it's that way. And then here's a more modern carrier. And these have gotten really fancy and very ergonomic and can be really fitted quite well to the person as far as the length and the fit of it. And usually there's some kind of a mechanism down here where the drum slides in with some sort of a bracket. And there's companies who do just that. They make, snare and tenor and bass carriers. So it's gotten very, very specialized, but it can be very simple. If you just take a drum and even use a rope and hang it, that's basically the concept. So here's an example of a rope tension versus a lug tension drum. So you can see the rope tension, again, it's got a wooden hoop, so you're not going to be doing rim shots because you don't want to beat that up. You can see that it's one continuous piece of rope that can be strung throughout the whole thing and tightened up the bottom and the top head. And then over here you can see these little rods, and then you can see this is a metal hoop and or rim. And in this case, this has got kind of a double system. Some of them actually go into what's called a lug down here, which this one doesn't have a metal piece. This one's got a double ring. And these can be cranked up really, really tightly so you can get a super tight, very articulate head. This one is not going to be tight. It's going to be tuned much lower. The feel is going to be a lot more like playing on your leg or a pillow. It's going to be a little mushy. So the playing style is a little different. Instead of playing into the drum, it's more of playing out of the drum, and a different sort of sound because you don't have this really, really tight, tight, head. So it's kind of, you can see they're very similar in a lot of ways, but they're also quite different. As far as matched versus traditional, this is a pretty good little schematic showing, matched grip is, matched. Both hands look the same, and it's great for drum set. You can get around the drum set quite a lot easier than trying to, get your hand. You're playing basically overhand versus underhand. And then the stick the fulcrum is sort of like right in here, and you can see that the stick kind of goes between fingers 3 and 4 at that last digit. And so you're doing this motion like this, like you're flinging water off your hand, rather than this kind of a thing with fingers. You're doing more of and this is called pronation. So like, in orthopedics, when you take your hand like this, that's called supination. And when you do this, it's pronation. So you're pronating. So you're using certain muscles in your arm, and I can tell you, I feel it, because my arm is, especially my non-dominant arm, is not used to doing that motion very much. My right arm is, because when you turn a door handle or when you open a jar, of course, sometimes jars are used, you can use your left hand if you're a righty, but it's just a motion that's not one that you get the extreme of. So I'm really having to work on, I'm just practicing all day long. I'm driving down the road and I'm flinging my arm like this. People probably think I have some kind of problem, but I'm just practicing that motion because that's the part that's needs to be worked up. And I think it was short, but what questions do people have about any of this?
Well, I want to know how you're doing on, like you were talking about the traditional versus matched. And are you switching? Do you have to switch then back and forth depending on the kind of music or what you're doing with the drums? And
Well,
what does that do to your brain?
Well, it has definitely been a challenge. It's going a whole lot better than I thought because I've tried at different points in my life to try it just to see what it was like. And I didn't like it, and there was no purpose for me to do it. It was just kind of like, this is the way I play. I mostly am playing drum set, tenors, I'm playing match grip. It just never was a problem for me. And I played snare all through college, but we were all matched players of the era that we were in, and it really wasn't emphasized that much unless you were in core. And I was in core, but I played tenor, so it worked out for me. But now, because tenors are too heavy, it's either I don't get to play at all or I play in the pit, which is not really what I want to do in the front playing cymbals, or I'll do a little of that, but this is a big commitment to do this. And so I want to make sure I get to, it's a challenge. And so why not? And so it's going a lot better than I thought. I still am practicing every day on drum set match grip, and I'll pull out my practice pad. Oh, I don't have my stand right here. I'd actually demonstrate. I was using it last night, but I actually stand here for about an hour a day and just back and forth. I'll put music on so it's not too boring, or I'll pull out some old music that's kind of easier. And it's like starting all over. Like I'm almost like teaching myself like I'm my own student. Like I hear my voice of like what would I tell my student at this phase what to do next. So I'll do big stroke, small stroke. So a large tap and a little, or a large note and then a tap. So it's like boom, tap, boom, tap, boom, tap, boom, tap, right. Then I'll go tap, boom, tap, boom, tap, boom. So I'll do a little and then a big. Then I'll do big, big, little, little, flams, drags, and then start working the rudiments and then start doing some solos and some exercises. And, and the whole time you don't want to space out, you need to be engaged. And so, and it's funny because where I'm standing, right in front of me is Steve Gadd's poster. And so sometimes I'll be standing there and and it's Steve Gadd kind of like this, he's kind of like he's leaning forward and it's like he's watching me, So I'm like, I'm working it, Steve, I'm working it here. And or I'll put on some music because after a while of doing that, you just tend to zone out. Like, what am I gonna have for lunch? Or what do I need to run any errands? I try to maintain my focus, and I look at myself. That's another thing. If you have a mirror, or I'll put the computer on and I'll do a zoom just so I can see my sticks to see how it looks. And I'll just do that over and over. I'll put music on and just play with the music, just, back and forth. And I'm marching, I'm mark time. And I have a little pad because it's a hard floor here. I have a little one of those pads that you have for offices that you can stand on that have a little gush, and I'll just stand there and just do that. And then after a while, I'm like, okay, I need to do something else. I'll go work on something on drum set, go back to match grip, play some songs, play a few exercises, and then go back over here. And so I'm getting quite a bit of practice, and we've talked about it before. It's sort of a miracle, but practice actually does work. And it's always, you can tell when a student practices and when they don't practice. I mean, it's not any kind of, everybody's like, well, how did you get to do that? Well, the answer is really simple. You just practice. Everybody wants the secret. Like they somehow think it's easier for you, or something. And it's like, no, I just, blood, sweat, and tears, baby. Like you just gotta, like with anything, if you're going to do anything, you just have to keep doing it and develop good practice, not just hours and hours and hours of doing what you already know. Stretch yourself, like when you're practicing, and I know we've talked about this before, if somebody was listening, it should sound pretty terrible. If it sounds good, you're not practicing. You're playing what you already know. And like it should be a struggle. It should be start and stop, slow it down, one note at a time, move it together. I mean, it's painful. It's a painful thing, one note at a time, and then the measure, and then two measures, and then eight measures, and then do it again, do it faster. Work on this. Each time should be better. So it's a constant failure. And that's the thing that I think people who embrace failure become successful. If you just do it and expect to do it perfect, you give up. I mean, it's just like you see this other person, and you're like, I can never do that. I'll just give up. But, if you would just embrace that it's going to be a slow, painful process, pretty soon it's not so bad. And you're like, wow, I can do that. And I don't even have to think about it. I can just do that in my sleep. But now there's something else looming. What's the next thing you don't want to stop. You got to keep growing and growing if you want to get better at anything in life. So I don't know. Did that answer your question?
Yes,
Hey, Barb, how are you today?
good. Except my
And
hair is frizzling. I'm curling my hair while I'm watching you.
oh, awesome.
And I
Very
can't make these curlers. If anyone knows how to do them, let me know. There's these curlers that, remember the girl that was in the office across from Victoria? She came in one day and had these curls. And she told me to get these. Can you see them?
No, we can't.
And
Your screen is dark. We see your name. Oh, there you
look,
go.
they look like this and they bend. And I'm
Oh,
bending
wow.
them and everything pops out all over the place. I can't figure out, there's got to be a trick to it.
Oh, wow. That looks complicated.
Weird. I've
All
turned
right.
them every which way. Oh, I wanted to mention one thing. I bought in Europe 50 years ago a child's drum. It was small, so I assumed it was a child's, but it was well used. So I was thinking maybe it was a drummer in an army or something, And I
Do you
had it
have
for years and it had ropes on it. And then I sold it when I moved.
it? Okay.
Now I
Okay.
wish I had it.
Well, yeah, or it could have been a drum maybe that was on a drum set, maybe a tom-tom or something like that, a smaller one. Sometimes
I
they have.
don't know. It was really old and it had handwritten French across the head. So I thought maybe it belonged to Louis the 14th's child or something,
You never know.
Oh,
I
it
know
had a,
garage sales and stuff, you just never know what people, find. And that's what I've had fun just researching things to make sure before I sell stuff, I kind of have done my homework and I know what's what. And it's been fun. And you can find, well, with the internet, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we wouldn't have known. And a lot of stuff like that probably went. But nowadays, you can look just about anything up and you'll see a picture of it and you'll know, oh, this is not the only one of
yeah.
these that
Did I
exists.
tell you I had 2 lamps in a yard sale? Didn't know how much they were. And somebody came by and said, well, let me show you how to do this. She went to Google and took a photograph of it somehow, and it brought up all of those from everyone who had them. And I was going to sell them for $15. They were worth 85 each. So I sold them for 45 each and they went like that.
Yeah, nice. Fun. Oh,
But there's something on Google where you can photograph. I think you just push Google and take a photograph and it brings them up automatically. I don't know how she did it.
I think I've heard of that, but I don't know the name of the app or whatever, but that's pretty cool. And
I
even,
don't think it was an app. It was just the Google thing.
huh. All
Go to
right.
Google and take a picture. Maybe they have a camera on the front page.
It's amazing. I don't know, but it is amazing what, same thing with coins. There's an app, I know of an app that like you could take a picture of the coin and it'll just tell you like where it's from, like if it's a foreign and you don't know what country it was or whatever, and it will identify it. So it's kind of, it's just fascinating.
Magic. It's magic.
It is. Well,
Okay, you want to change subjects for a second?
sure.
Have you heard that there's a balloon that's the size of 3 buses floating over Montana? It passed Montana yesterday. It's above air traffic, but they shut down all the air traffic for 60 miles around. And they think it's Chinese. And Biden has canceled his trip to China. And I'm a nervous wreck.
Well, just sit tight. There's always See, that's the good thing about the internet, and the bad thing is like years ago, I'm sure there were tornadoes and there were all these things across the world, but you didn't hear about it. And now with the
Right,
internet, we get to hear about everything. And some stuff we probably just would be best to just turn it off, turn off
right.
the news and go for a walk and enjoy your neighbors. And so, yeah, I'm going to switch back to props. So I have a couple of props that are sitting here because I was like, well, what else can I show and tell? I started thinking, well, maybe I should pull out my drum corps shirts, because I do have different shirts.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was, I was like, I have some really cool props. So I'm going to do my props now and this is going to be hopefully a fun one. So I'm going to do it kind of slow.
Well,
I hope
Karen, when you're talking about troopers, are you going to talk about troopers?
I can. But remember the old commercials where all of a sudden somebody's talking and then this happened? I gotta
Yes.
get my hand, I gotta get my hand just right. Okay, so I love this guy. So I've had this guy a long time. And he used to actually, if I change the battery, probably would still work. He has a light, so you squeeze the bass drum and he lights up. But he's got these little adjustable arms and so yeah, you gotta love this guy. So he's in the studio. My other prop that sits right here on my desk and he stares at me, kind of like Steve Gadd does. I got this little bunny rabbit, and there's like a movie about him. I think it's called Hops. But he's really awesome. If you've seen that movie, this little guy can drum and he looks real. He like his fur and and he's a great drummer. So he sits right here and he's kind of got that posture like, what are you doing? Are you doing that right? He sort of sits here on my speaker. Like if I'm editing or whatever, I look up and he's looking down at me like, hey, make sure you get that sound right. And then my other little guy, he needs batteries too, because he used to sing and dance. But it's just like he's a hamster. He's got
Cute.
drumsticks.
It's
And
cute.
he actually, I'm gonna have to put batteries in him and try him out. But he dances around, and I think he sings maybe "Happy Birthday" or something. So I just had to show you my props that are sitting right here with me every class that I figured might be kind of fun. Um, so let's see. I wanted to find out ideas for the future. So we've done drummers of the week. We've done different kinds of drums. We've done different kinds of music. We've done the programs and the posters. What kinds of things would you like to explore?
Well,
I like,
I want to know more about the troopers
Oh,
because
okay. Yeah,
what
that's right.
I don't understand actually. I mean, are these franchises or I mean, how many people get to share the name troopers? How do you get to call a group call yourself a troopers or any other name by that thing? And I'd love to see your favorite clips if you've got any favorite clips of
Oh,
troopers
yeah.
performances or any other drum corps performances for that matter, because those are fascinating. And
Yeah.
if you could show them during class and then comment on them, that would be super helpful because I see these things and I don't know what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I would like to try that. The only thing is, I think sometimes when I have tried to show YouTube videos, what I might do is like, do a Zoom of me watching it and talking and then playing it for you or something like that. Because then I think it would come through better,
Better.
like almost like a YouTube. Well, I don't know. I'll have to play with that. But I like that idea too. And so, just to give you a little history on drum corps. So basically, years and years ago, it was an activity that started kind of like with the VFW and places like that would organize um, uh, a group where kids could learn to play bugle and they could learn to play drums, and they would perform for things that were like parades. You would perform for the Memorial Day parade, and it kind of started like parades, and then from there it became like a field show that you would do like at halftime or something like that for a football game. And then it became a competition where groups, and this was back in the 30s, 40s, 50s ish. And then it became even more evolved. By the time the troopers were established, this is our 65th anniversary. So that's why this year is a big year. Once you turn 21, you can't do this activity anymore. And they have what's called senior drum corps, which sounds like, you have to be 80 to do it. That just means you're 22 and up. And so most senior corps now are young people, less than 30. But there are some old geezers like me still out doing this sort of activity. And then the thing about it is you travel around the country and you compete against one another. And if you ever get the chance at the Dome, the Southeastern Regional Championship is amazing to go and watch. Drum corps. And so basically they have judges and they are very specifically judging different things. They have a judge for the color guard, a judge for the drum section, several judges actually, one on the field, one up in the box, and general effect. And it used to be like you would get what's called a tick. So if the drum judge was standing right, and they would actually try to intimidate you back then, they'd come right up in front of you, and we were taught to stare right through them. They would come up pretty close and just stand there and stare at you, and you're supposed to just glaze your eyes over and look through them, which is hard to do, but our instructors trained us. We didn't show any emotion. We were just playing our way, and they would come up and they would try to intimidate you. So you'd make mistakes, and then they would give you these little check marks, and you'd lose tenths of a point, and then you'd end up getting scored. Now it's a whole different thing. First of all, the judges can barely be on the field because you're going to get run over because the drill is so incredibly fast. There are judges who get caught and they don't know how to get out of where they are. So they kind of have to know the show so they know where they can stand and where they can't stand and things like that. But this activity has evolved to the point where it's literally like an Olympic event. So it's musical, but it's very athletic. And so that's kind of the really quick evolution of drum corps. So the troopers started in Casper, Wyoming by a man named Jim Jones, who was a contractor. And he did this activity. It was just a activity, and he was the sponsor of it. And a lot of kids from that area didn't have a lot of opportunities for things. You could maybe play basketball or football, but this was an activity for music kids. And his own daughters threw rifles, and he built his house as an A-frame so that they could practice in the winter. They would just be in the A-frame and throw in their rifle all winter long, so that by summertime they had one of the best color guards in the United States, and still do. Very historical. They throw rifles. A lot of the other corps, their color guard, which are the flags, they have different props. And I mean, they do really amazing things with crazy props that you've never heard of before. But troopers very traditionally have that rifle that they throw around. And so there's really three components. There's the color guard, and they're doing all of the design that people like to really watch and pay attention to. There's the horn line, and there's several different types of horns, all the way from the soprano horn all the way down to the really low pitch. And then you have the drum line. And then within the drum line, the different, there's the snares, the tenors, the basses, and the front ensemble. And so that's kind of how it goes. And so now this Troopers Legacy Corps is the alumni, and they're doing this one-time thing. They've been preparing this for 5 years to come back and play at finals. And a couple of other corps that have been around for a long time, like Santa Clara Vanguard and some of the others, have done this too at their 50th anniversary or their 75th anniversary. They'll get a bunch of alumni and come back and do a lot of the classics. And the true drum corps fan, drum corps is one of these things. When you go to the stadium, nobody is walking around like in a football game. People are walking around during the game. When there's a corps performing, nobody stands up, nobody moves. Unless they're really excited, they'll stand up and do a standing ovation in the middle. Drum corps fans are hard to please. So, I don't give too many standing ovations. When I go to a drum corps show, I only stand if I really think they're fantastic. Whereas, you go to other shows, you go to a marching band competition, you want to cheer the kids on or whatever. At drum corps, I mean, if you get a standing ovation, you deserved it, because And sometimes it's not always at the end, it could be in the middle of the show, but there's nobody who's getting up to go get popcorn in the middle. You sit down during a chorus performance. It's a respect thing. And so there's a lot of like these rules that like newbies don't know, but people, teach them right away. Like, hey, sit down. You don't stand up in a performance. And they'll even announce it because they know that there's newbies that are there. But most of the fans that are there are former people who played in corps. So everybody's wearing their jackets. And so you see all of us old geezers with all of our jackets from, and you see each other. Hey, what year did you march or whatever? And they always have a place where you can go where they sell merchandise, and they always have T-shirts and paraphernalia from the different corps. But it's a very I don't want to say cult, but the people who go kind of all, it's a very kind of select group of people that know what's going on. But a lot of band directors, this is what they do in the summer to get their kids excited about marching band, is they'll get 150 tickets in a block and they'll bust their kids in during band camp week. So they see this and say, hey, look, guys, it gets them all excited about their marching show for the fall. And some of these kids will go on to March Corps. Very few, but some will. And some high schools are kind of like feeders for corps because they're so elite at the marching band level. And they start this in elementary school. I mean, they start the band directors in elementary school are friends with the middle school directors who are friends with the high school directors who are friends and who teach in the summer in corps. And it's this pipeline because you can't just decide one day I'm going to do it. It's pretty hard to get in, and you have to be a really good player already. And they groom kids to be able to go. And then a lot of kids will march a particular corps for 2 or 3 years, and they want to age out their last year in their favorite corps, which they haven't been able to get into yet. And so, there's a lot of people who march different corps. They move around. Nowadays, I think they're trying to keep people, because, like for troopers, you don't want to be a feeder corps. You don't want to like have somebody from 17, 18, 19, and 20, and then all of a sudden 21, they go somewhere else. And then that group gets the feeders from everybody and is, always wins. So it's nice to retain the kids that you've gotten really, really, really good so that they march out with your corps. But there is a lot of kind of maneuvering around. And so anyway, it's.
Where did they get? I saw that movie on TV with all of the drummers, the kids. And, it was a drum corps, I guess. And where did they get all those kids to do all that and be on TV and actors at the same time?
Yeah, so that was a different kind of that was the movie was Drumline. They have one and
Yes.
two, and that's a totally different style than the drum corps I'm talking about. It's also very cool, but it's more dance and it's more theatrical and it's more, there are certain schools they'll still have that style where it's a lot more flamboyant, a lot more motion, and they have kind of a drum off and they just went and got some kids that were at those schools to be actors and it's a different style. It's very cool also, but it's different. It's not as technical, it's not as difficult, but it's a lot more flamboyant and fun to watch, and it was a good movie.
Yeah,
I
it
think
was fun to watch.
it brought a lot of people to kind of drum corps. Um, so yeah, it's all good because it's an activity for kids, and I think kids get into trouble when they don't have something to do, and it also builds a lot of life skills, things like teamwork, and you might be tired, but there's somebody next to you who's tired, and it's just like, come on, guys, let's do this. And so there's a lot of camaraderie and all those skills are ones that you use in life. Just the work ethic is absolutely spectacular. These kids work so incredibly hard. I mean, we worked 14 hours a day, and we were allowed an hour for breakfast and showering, an hour at lunch, 2 hours for dinner, and the rest of the time our drums were on, and or we were doing something to practicing on pads. Even on the bus, we would sit in a section and we'd have our pads. and it was like it was the best thing I ever did. And I've done a lot of stuff, and I've done a lot of really cool stuff, and musical stuff, but it still remains the pinnacle of, there's just nothing like it. And in the summer, for troopers, when we hear the Battle Hymn of the Republic tune, and at the end we a lot of times we'll sing it, surrounded, holding each other, and you look around and everybody's crying. I mean, everybody, and even the people who are listening are crying, because it's just one of that was our signature thing. And we were very a patriotic group, so a lot of times people would stand. The troopers are kind of real classic, real classy. There's different corps that have different kind of personalities. Certain ones are known for being funny, or being, playing jazz music, or and the troopers were always called the America's Corps, and it was always very sort of like, our tunes are like the Western, Old West. And so How the West Was Won, and Battle Hymn of the Republic, and Magnificent Seven, and Silverado, all these kind of westernized songs. And they've maintained that throughout the years. And some corps have really evolved. They come out with their uniforms and I don't recognize them. I don't even know who they are. I'm like, who is that? I'm like, oh gosh. They've lost their sort of personality along the way, or they don't have a personality. They just, "Well, this year we're doing jazz, and next year we're doing classical, and we're going to change our uniform." And um, it's nice to have, to evolve, to keep evolving, and not just keep wearing the same thing, but at the same time, stay true to your personality. And so they've done that really, really well. So,
Are you thinking of going there and being part of,
yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm doing this summer. Playing the
but
rope.
are you going as an observer? Are you going as a teacher or what?
I'm playing the rope drum. That's why I'm learning this whole new style.
Okay.
And last summer I did it also. And we have about 218 people right now, which is huge. And about half are former troopers from all the different years, all the way from my years, all the way up till the age outs from last year. And so, it's a big span of history. And so, yeah, we're going to be playing at the World Finals in Indianapolis in August. And it's cool because all the junior corps will be there, and then we're the only alumni corps, and it's half former troopers and half people who wanted to be troopers or like the troopers. Some of the other alumni corps have been exclusively their alumni, and with us, we found that to get a bigger draw, to get the better quality people, we're going to have to open it up instead of just Troopers alumni. We started out 5 years ago as just Troopers alumni, but in order to really grow and get a big group, it's Troopers, half Troopers alumni and half other corps alumni who want to come back, or people who've never marched. Well, I think you can't just show up and do this. Like, all these people have been playing their whole lives. Like, all of them have been marching band, drum corps, music directors. They've all have been, you don't just like say you're going to do it and show up, and you just can't. So it's going to be really awesome. I hope I
There are
can.
no young people, right? Right.
Well, we're the alumni, so we're older than 21, but
Right.
all the other people that are there are under 21. So there'll be 12 world-class corps, and maybe I'll send you some drum homework on, like you said, some of the famous clips from different things, some of my favorite shows I could probably name off. So there's a group called Phantom Regiment, and they did a show on Spartacus, which was, basically they put the whole, it was like Spartacus on the football field. And then there have been other, famous ones where just all these different themes, just about anything you could think about. You could think about, okay, Star Trek or James Bond, or there used to be a group called the Bayonne Bridgemen, and they had these long yellow raincoats, and they called them, they looked like bananas, but they were funny. But they would do Earth, Wind, and Fire songs, and they don't exist anymore. They kind of morphed into other corps in that area, but some really famous drum corps came out of. There's a lot of history in the different ones, but they were funny, but they were really still good. And you have to like to come off being funny. You can't be sloppy. You got to still be really really good, but do it in a funny way. And there have been some other groups have tried to do it like that too. So they're all different. And that's the neat thing, you know. And I don't know how these judges these days can differentiate even from the first place to the 25th. They're all fantastic. They're like the best marching band you've ever seen, but times 100 times better. And the difference between marching band, of course, and drum corps is that marching band has flutes and clarinets and other instruments. Then drum corps, it's all the horn line. There's 5 different kinds of horns, but they're all, there's no clarinets, there's no flutes. So you don't have the woodwind section. It's all brass and percussion. And so you have that big sound, when you hear that and just the hairs on your neck stand up, and you get goosebumps. That happens at every show at some point. Not every show, but like a few times in every event that'll happen to you where you'll just be like all prickly, from something that they do. And there's these different parts to the show. There's something called the push where the whole corps comes forward, and there's different sort of things that they do. One of the things we're going to do this year is start on the sideline. This is very classic, like where a football field is. You start on the sideline, the whole corps, you move forward, and then you turn in a company front. And so that's old style. Nowadays they come from all different ways. Sometimes they start off all over the place and run to their position or whatever, but doing a big company front from the get-go, it's going to be just like one kind of thing after another. That sort of classic troopers drill or what have you. So
Is
yeah.
it like the Olympics where you have to do certain standard moves or drum moves, or you just can do anything?
You kind of can do anything, but there's certain parts that typically will happen. Like there's usually a drum solo at some point. There's usually, and the thing is, it's like usually a 13-minute show ish, and you usually have about 5 songs. So there's usually different components. There's an opener, for instance. There's always a ballad part that's kind of quiet, where maybe the horn line will take up the flags and do some kind of a color guard kind of thing. There's usually there's a drum solo. There's usually a closer. So, but other than that, there's not like particular things that you have to do. You kind of can do whatever. The drills tend to have a fast part, and then they tend to have a part where you just can't come out and just like fast, fast, fast for 13 minutes. There's a part, and the themes, the music usually fits. They're written just for the corps. So they might take a song and they have arrangers who will arrange it for that corps. So like you recognize the song, but it's not in any way that you've heard before exactly. And they'll take, like, let's say your theme is the moon. You'll have 5 songs that are something, Blue Moon, all the moon songs will be in the thing. So it's not helter skelter. There's usually like some kind of a running thread. And I mean, they have design teams, music teams that come together and discuss this during the off season, or sometimes 2 or 3 years before. They kind of know what they're going to do. And their drums look a certain color. Their color guard will change, their props. It's all around. And sometimes I have to read about it. This is the kind of corps that I don't appreciate, is like if I have to read the program to figure out like what is going on. Oh, their theme was moon. I didn't know that. I ought to, as an audience member, I don't like to read about the shows ahead of time. I like to just show up because I want to be surprised. But if I don't know what's going on, and there are some that are so esoteric that I can't figure out what is the theme and what is happening, I like it when I at least kind of have some kind of I know what's going on. Like, oh, this is about the moon, and how cool that they did that tune and that tune and oh, there's some moon stuff, like you need to be able to figure it out. But some of them have evolved to the point where like, you have to read about it. It's like going to a play. If I have to read about it, I don't that's not exciting for me. I ought to be able to at least kind of be able to come into it and get it. So I want it to be entertaining, but technically good, and not just for kind of academic sake. Sometimes you'll see shows that are just everybody thinks are just amazing, but I'm not tapping my foot. I'm just sitting there like, what is this? You know, I'd rather kind of be able to at least have some relevance, and it should speak to the hardcore drum corps fan and the newbie. If the newbie and the hardcore person like it, then that's a good show. If only these people like it and these people don't know what's going on, or vice versa, then to me that's you're missing the mark somewhere. And there's certain corps that are audience pleasers, but they don't always get the best scores, but the audience always loves them. And then there's others that kind of get really great scores, and then the audience is like, oh, all right. So somewhere in the middle, you ought to be able to please the judges and the audience, and make it kind of, I don't know, relevant for everybody. So I could talk forever about drum corps. All you had to say is drum corps. See, and I killed all of our time. Is there anything else? Molly, how about you? Is there anything else that you're kind of interested in or want to talk about in future?
Yeah, I'd like to know if we're ever going to play any music again.
Yes, I think we should do that. So tell me, I know you liked some of the roll off things. Um, Anything that you particularly like or don't like, or I know you like triplets.
I don't really care, Karen. I mean, we can play avocado toast all day long. I just want to play something, you
Okay.
know?
Yeah. All right. Let's do more of that because we've gotten away from that. It's all talking and no playing. So we could do some playing.
I'm going to show you something that I have. Ready? Let me see. Can you see it?
I can see something red. It's a little
Wait a
blurry.
minute. I don't know. They put some new things on my phone and I don't know. It's buzzing out
Oh,
the back.
wait. Yes, I see something. It's a character.
Why won't it
Can you go
defuzz?
closer? Can you go closer? They look like little statues.
It's a little Abner wind-up band, and it's got a drummer on it and a piano player.
Nice.
Trying to make it work. Can you see? Well, I'll have to figure out what's wrong with my camera. I hate that I downloaded something and I can't make anything work now.
Yeah, it looks a little blurry, but very cool. See, Barb could do her own show with all her own props and her own stories.
No,
Try
I'm
to
just a
do
collector like you
my
are.
job, Barb.
I'm a collector like you are. That's all.
And Jasmine's got all the background, y'all are all got it going on. Molly's got the birds and the jungle and everything. So I love
That's
it.
what. Well, I admire the fact that you can just start research like crazy, like you just research all the time. That's great.
Well, now that I'm retired, I'm still kind of a teacher at heart, and I still like learning, I guess is what it is. And
Yeah.
it could be about anything. I could, look like I told you, I learned a lot about coins, and now I'm learning a lot about 78s. My next project is I have some piano music, and I'm going to start kind of categorizing and looking through that. Some of it I want to keep because my mom played piano, so I want to keep it. But some of it is sitting in a box, and I'm like, somebody, there's a guy who came to my garage sale who collects music, and I was just like, I'm gonna figure out what I have, what I want, what I can part with, and if he can preserve it or do something with it or put it in his collection, it's better than sitting in a box. So trying to kind of, so that'll be
I'd
my
like to know what site that is because I have some old Victorian music sheets and I've been just selling them at yard sales for like $3 or $4. And I bet somebody would really want them.
Yeah, I can when I find out. I haven't done it yet, but I will look stuff up, and it's kind of fun just to kind of research things. I've got some old Avon cologne bottles that's on
Oh,
my
I've got those too. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so I'm gonna research those. I
They're
might
big Avon collectors, big Avon collectors.
yes, there are. There are people who collect everything. There's Barbie people, there's all these different collectors, and like I obviously collect, drum stuff. I'm not getting rid of any of that, but some of the other stuff it's like, do I really need all this? So I'm
But
digging
don't they have shows where they like a fair or something where it's only for music people or drummers or something? Like they have
Well,
rock shows and they have.
we do have the Percussive Arts Society has this huge exhibit hall, but it's all new stuff. They don't really they have some older stuff, but I think I mean there are people who still collect instruments and things like that. So yeah, but again, it's kind of a little niche group with a group within a group kind of. So, yeah, just about anything you think of, there's somebody who knows what it is or likes it or whatever. I think we might have to stop here. So send me ideas. I will find us something to play, and maybe I'll send you a preview of it, and I'll find some clips, maybe talk over some clips, and we could do a little bit of that. I don't want to just make this a drum corps thing, but it does get me excited. But if there's drummers you want to learn about again or whatever, we can definitely do whatever we like. So we're still going. This group is going strong.
Yes,
And
we're retired.
yeah, this is what we do. We can still learn, So, all right. Well, have a great weekend, and I will see you all next week.
Bye.
Thank
Thank you.
Bye, bye everybody. Bye
Gotta
bye.
figure out what the camera's doing where it's at. See, look at how weird these curlers are.
I love them. I love it. All right. Bye bye.
Bye.